What's going on, guys? I'm David with the Disponett Experience, and today we have Ben Herzog, or Herzog, if I can get it just right, on today. 21 years of teaching experience in the media arts, and as you guys know, I'm a full-time photographer and videographer, and I thought it would be really cool to have a high school teacher on to kind of talk about the modern-day youth in media. And so tell me a little bit about your background and kind of teaching in today's world.
Well, I started out, in college, decided, I wanted to do something technology related. I didn't really know what. So I graduated with my bachelor's from Berea College back in 2000. Still didn't have a clue what I wanted to do with my life, but I knew I wanted to do something in the technology field. It was degrees were limited at Berea College. It was a small liberal arts school. So,
Yeah. You're not even allowed to have a car like your first two semesters or two.
First year or two, something like that.
Yeah. And you have to work.
Had to park it like way off campus.
Don't you have to work too? Mm-hmm. Like, do you have to do some kind of student work?
Yeah, there's a work study program.
Yeah.
You work 10 hours a week, and you have to financially qualify, which I did. I have 6 brothers and sisters, so I very much qualified. And so once I got in, you work 10 hours a week, and you kind of pay off your tuition as you go. So yeah, I graduated debt free, which was a huge advantage. It was I'm very blessed in that regard. But anyway, once I graduated, I decided, I always had a professor in college that used to tell me, Ben, you'd make a great teacher. And I was like, nah, I don't think I would want to pursue that. It just never occurred to me. There's no teachers in my family. So, but he's like, so that always resonated in the back of my mind. And so once I graduated, I started working for a photographer off of Versailles Road or Leestown Road back in the day, and really enjoyed that. So I did some youth sports and I worked in the lab half time and was photographer half time. And so I traveled around Central Kentucky doing youth sports, and it was fun. But I was kind of like, I can't see myself doing this for a long period of time, So about a year into that, I decided I think I want to teach. I think my professor in college was right. He called it. So I went back to school at EKU and got my teaching certification and started at Dunbar a year later. So I did their fast track program.
Okay, I was about to say, since you already had a degree.
Right. I worked on a master's, and EKU had a fast track program. It was the first year they were piloting the program, and so I was in that program that first time. They called it the MAT, the Master of Arts in Teaching.
Okay.
So I did that from 2001 to 2, and I was offered a job at Dunbar in 2002, and they were looking for a graphic arts design teacher / photography. So I jumped at that experience once I was offered the job. It helped that I student taught there in the spring too. They got to know me really well, and they knew that was my kind of passion. And so they're like, oh, well, we just so happen to have a job open. So it just fell right into my lap.
And this was the early 2000s, right?
Yeah, this was 2002.
So this is right when digital was kind of starting to make a little bit more of a splash. I mean, it had been around, I think, since 98 or 99, but when consumers starting to get their hands on cameras was like early 2000s.
In fact, when I was at Berea, I got my hands on my first digital camera. I don't even know what it was, but the thing shot maybe like 75 PPI. It was awful quality. I was an ag miner, and so I was out on the college farm with my camera, of course, so I was kind of tech and ag at the same time, But I had this digital camera I wanted to try out because I was just shooting film at the time. And got out there and started shooting the birth of a cow. And it was really interesting. But so I photographed this cow giving birth, and when I got back to the lab and started looking at the pictures, I was like, man, these look awful. The quality was just not there, So obviously I started with the darkroom and actual film teaching at Dunbar in 2002. They had a darkroom. So I jumped right in and knew exactly what to do because I had done it a ton of times.
I've never worked in a darkroom. And I've been shooting now for, 15 years professionally. Yeah. So
I've shot probably thousands of rolls of film and processed them and made hundreds of prints, if not thousands of prints in the darkroom. When I worked at the place for the youth sports place, that's what they were shooting at the time.
And that film's kind of made a little bit of a comeback in a way. It seems like more people are experimenting, getting these old cameras and then trying to find film for them and then going out and shooting.
Yeah, I think it's just it's like an old dinosaur that people are kind of it's like a phase, Everything comes in phases, and people want to resurrect something that they haven't done in a while. And I think it's always been fun. I've shot a little bit of film here and there over the years, but really it's been few and far between, because it's kind of a bittersweet kind of thing, because a lot of my students, when they would shoot film, it's a great experience, but every time they advance that clicker forward, and then take a shot, I'd be like, there goes another dime, forward it again, there goes another dime.
So you better have your lighting right.
Have your lighting right. You know what you're doing, have, composition, everything in line before you take it, because that's costing you physical money. Yeah. But every time they, take a picture. But anyway, when we get back to the lab and they process it, especially when they're first starting, they didn't load it on the reel right. The film had to be separated from itself on the reel. And they wouldn't always separate it right. They'd load it on the reel wrong, and the film would be stuck to itself.
Oh, no.
And so when they process it, and then they'd take it out, and they'd open it up, and it would be all purple and blotchy because they didn't let the chemicals flow through the film strip correctly.
It's part of the learning process.
It's part of the learning process. And so you lose your photos when you do that, and you have to go do it again.
How long did you guys have a darkroom before you guys kind of moved to digital?
We probably taught it maybe 8 to 10 years before.
Okay.
So it was about 2010, give or take, a year or two. But once I made, digital cameras finally had started, digital SLRs had come a long way at that point, and they were coming. I think it came down to affordability.
Well, yeah. So
that was the main driver.
I want to say in 2008 or 2009 is when the Canon T2i came out, which was like the first digital SLR that also shot 1080p video, which was a really big deal.
Yes.
I mean, because no camera shot the quality of video that those things shot if the lighting was good.
Right. And we started out on the Canon XSI. That was my first.
That was my very first digital camera that I bought.
That was, I used digital cameras before that, but I don't, it's been so long, I don't even remember the maker model, but it was a Nikon, some sort of Nikon, I think.
Well, so Nikon and Kodak had a digital SLR back in the early 2000s. That was like, it was the first prosumer, I think, like bigger SLR. I don't think it was full frame at the time. I don't know if they even had the full 35 millimeter frames in the early 2000s. But I remember Nikon and Kodak teaming up to make, which I thought was a weird thing, but Kodak was still a major name at the time.
Well, full cameras, like the traditional SLR cameras, were all full frame. They were just made that way. And then when digital took over, that's when they started with the...
Well, they had to transfer everything over, like ISO. A lot of people don't really understand what ISO means on the film side of things. They just know if it's a higher number, it gives me more light, and its quality is not as good. If it's a lower number, I don't need as much light, but then I don't have as much noise.
Right. And that's a good start. If you understand that much, you're doing good, in my opinion. So
yeah. So how are things changed since you first started out teaching? Just like I said, from going from film to digital. I know a couple of years ago you guys started implementing video. So much has changed I feel like in your job, like it's so much.
It really has. And if I had to stop and look at it over the years, people always are like, well, how does your job change? Because some content areas, your histories, your math and social studies, it's a lot of
same information.
Same information, maybe a different way of teaching it, like the technology advances.
Right.
But my field, the technology is my field.
Like
so it's
the way you teach it, what you teach, everything.
Everything constantly is evolving. And so just the fact that I started in the darkroom, even just the way I got files to students, when I had to share a file with them, we had a network drive that everybody had on their desktop computer. Well, I would drop it in my network drive, and then they would have access to it on their computer because they were accessing it from our local network. But now we use Google Drive for everything. And before that, I don't even remember what we used before that, but now it's like Google everything. And it's funny, I asked my class yesterday, I was like, we were talking about formats, in photography, like your RAW versus JPEG and TIFFs and all that. So we were going over all the the soft stuff for cameras, and I was asking my kids, I was like, do you all even know what like Microsoft is anymore? Because it's like everybody uses Google and everything. I was like, how many of you like Microsoft better than Google? And like one person raised their hand. So and I was like, they're both good. They're just different, you know?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, but I mean, that's what Google Drive is, not only a platform to store and share files, right?
Right.
But it has the full Microsoft suite pretty much in it. Google's version, Google
Right.
Docs,
Google
all the different
Sheets
Google
and all
Docs and Sheets and stuff. That same thing that Microsoft, I mean, I remember getting Word for the first time on my parents' computer when, I don't know, sometime in the early 2000s to mid 2000s, and being like, oh man, this will correct my spelling. And it was
amazing.
like, right. And then teachers were like, you had to have X amount of words in a paper, and it would literally read how many words or how many lines you had. And I'm like, well, according to Microsoft, I got my 500 words, so I'm done.
The minimalist, are you?
Something like, I hated
Yeah.
writing. Writing was not my thing in high school.
Yeah, everybody's got their strong suits, but yeah, to go back to your question, and the technology is constantly evolving, and just the way we did things 20 years ago versus now is just astronomically different. And what I'm teaching is also evolved.
How are you able to keep up with it?
Well,
Because literally, like, it in the last 5 years, I've had to teach myself so many new things about photography and video just to stay relevant in the market and keep getting work.
I have to do the same thing, so it's no different, except just now I have to share it with teenagers and teach it in a way that
I applaud you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. It's not an easy job, but it is very rewarding for sure. I was talking to a math teacher the other day. It was just went over and I was asking her something about my own child in her class, and we were just talking about how our next generation, a lot of people are frowning upon teaching, and I'm just like. And we were both sitting there saying, it's really not that bad. I think it's all in perspective.
Right.
Because my oldest son, who's a senior in high school, wants to be a STEM teacher. It's a new degree over at UK. They're doing science, technology, engineering, and math.
Okay.
STEM education is what it's called. So he's probably going to end up going to UK in the fall and doing STEM education. So he wants to be a teacher too. And a lot of people are like, did you have anything to do with that? I was like, absolutely not. This was all him. This is what he decided he wanted to do. And it's just funny, because the other math teacher I was talking to about just education in general, she's like, it's really not that bad of a gig. And
But I think the perception, at least if I'm at the glass window looking in, the perception is, one, are you guys getting compensated fairly for what you got to deal with? And then two, the political aspect of like what you can and can't do as a teacher and how kids behave. Because I guess I'm sure my parents' generation thought my generation was crazy in high school, right? But this generation, my perception is that they seem lazy. They don't seem like they want to work hard. They want to cut every corner they can. And they don't seem to have any respect for any authority.
I think, depending on the student, that there's some truth to that. And, and there's those that are on the other side of the fence. You've always had kids on both sides.
Yeah,
of the
of course. It just seems
it has evolved. I've noticed over the years that
they have more distractions too.
there are more distractions. I think the cell phone is a huge issue, and just the social media is not helping either.
Right.
I think I'm not against social media. I think I look at social media or a cell phone or a computer as a tool. A tool is an extension of your own personality, how you choose to use it. There's nothing wrong with those tools. It's how you choose to use it. And some choose to use it for good.
That's a lot of power. That's a really powerful, let's put this very powerful tool for someone at that age to be making their own decision with it.
Right. And a lot of it comes down to parental control. If parents are going to step in and say, show their child the way of, this is what it's useful for, you should do this with it, and should give them the tools to show them the right way to use that tool, then you're going to have a successful kid.
So how many parents do you think are stepping in and doing a good job of parenting without saying too many things about the parents
Right.
that you deal with?
I don't want to get into the political side because you asked, the second follow-up question was about politics.
Yeah.
And I keep out of politics. I
Yeah.
don't go down that road because it's not, it doesn't have any bearing on what I do.
Exactly.
The kids, I'm there to teach these kids and teach them the content, but I'm also kind of like a psychologist in some respects. I'm trying to build relationships with them in a way that will allow me to, reach them, whether they're, I had a kid the other day that told me that a parent has got cancer right now. And if I didn't know that, and, he's late on all of his assignments, but I know what's going on and why he's late on his assignment. So I'm going to cut the kid a little slack. He's going through hell right now, and and it sucks. So and I, as a Christian, I told him, I'm praying for you, man. As in a class, I can't really talk about that or whatever, and I don't. But on a one-on-one, I'm like, look, this me to you, I want to say a prayer for you because I really and truly in my heart believe that this is, I believe that God's looking after you, whether or not it turns out the way things you expect. It's not in your control. It's not mine. It's not. When you realize that, there's a peace in your life, and it's how I approach teaching just in general.
Okay.
When I teach these kids, if they're willing to give, then I'm willing to give. It's a two-way street. If they're willing to work with me, then I can with them too. But some kids, they just if they don't want to, give a little bit and actually, and I tell them, look, I'm here to listen. I'm here to teach you. I'm here to help you. And if they're not willing to perk that head up and run with it, then there's not a whole lot I can do, albeit as much as I try and it's hard, when you see a kid that lays down their head and just will not, and you can, give them all the pep talk you want or try to ask them questions, but if they're not willing to talk, I'm kind of at a standstill. So,
and I would think your class is one of the more fun classes to be in versus math or science or for a lot of these kids.
The kids that take my class, they do want to be there. Most of them sign up for it because they like the elective. Electives tend to have that more draw to it because they get to choose those versus having to take them because it's not a core class or whatever. Right. But they also get just as distracted with the technology. I've got desktop computers in there. I've got equipment that we're using, and again, it's a tool. They can use it for good or not. And, some of them get distracted by it and use it for things that are not conducive to class. And others will use it for what it's designed for, which is to learn, photography or graphic design or whatever it is, what class that I'm teaching at the time.
Far as, I guess, like teachers and maybe even fellow teachers that you work with, how important, I guess, is it with like just the teacher actually making the effort? Because that's one thing that I noticed, because, I've been to Dunbar a handful of times for different events, for career day or come in and teach the class. And I definitely can tell that it seems like, at least again, last looking in, that a majority of your students actually seem to be more focused, right? I didn't feel like the few times I've been there where that your students are actually paying attention to me. They weren't ignoring me. They weren't on their phones. They gave me more respect than I kind of expected from a class. But I think a lot of that might have to do with the way that you teach versus like other teachers that just get burnt out, but they keep teaching anyways.
Yeah, I mean, you do have to have a passion for what you do. I think that's true in any profession, not just teaching, but teaching especially, because the kids can see that. They know if you're burned out, they can tell just by looking at you, and they're like, no, this person, I don't want to be in this class because they don't seem to care about what they're teaching. But I'm a very energetic, very passionate person. I'm very sarcastic, and I've got a good sense of humor. So I think, you almost have to be an entertainer. I've always said that about teaching. You almost have to be an entertainer to be able to keep their attention these days because everything's so visual, you want to look at this and this and this, and you got 1,000 things hitting you all at the same time, and it's like, how do you tunnel your focus and actually do what you're supposed to be doing? And in my classes, again, they want to be there so that it helps to have the tools like cameras and stuff. We go outside and do these photo shoots, and that's when they're most engaged because you give them a task and it's like, let's go do it. We don't just learn the theory, but I put it to the test. And I think that's what makes a big difference. And so if you have a class that, you could do that with history, I guess. I wouldn't know how because I'm not a history teacher, but if I was, I would have to find a way to make it interactive, find a way to
more
make
hands-on.
it more relevant, hands-on, right. And my classes are very hands-on, which does help a lot. But again, you still get kids that are in there that just, they've got something going on in their lives, and I have 180 to 200 kids in all of my classes, right? And does
it change every semester?
No, it's.
Or do you get them for the full year?
We're on an A/B day schedule, so on A day I'll have one set of classes. B day is the next.
And that's for
day.
the whole year.
That's for the whole year. Yeah,
okay.
We rotate every other day, so I've seen the kids every other day all year. But yeah, that's.
So you feel like there's a lot of teachers teaching that shouldn't be teaching?
There's probably some, I mean, in this job market,
Without putting anybody out there.
Right. I'm not. I just, there are some teachers that are in it to finish the race because they're at the end of their career, maybe. But yeah, I'm sure there's some in it that maybe they are in it because they feel like they have to be. It's a set career. It's, but it's not necessarily their passion, and
Right.
so that can kind of resonate through your teaching. I think it's like any job. You're going to have people that are good at it and people that aren't so, and beggars can't be choosers, I guess. I don't know.
Fair enough.
But it's most teachers that want to teach don't do it because they need the money, or because, well, they need the money, obviously they wouldn't be doing it, but they do it because they are passionate about it. They want to be.
But you're
there.
not going to get rich being a teacher.
No, you're not. But I'm not complaining either, because Fayette County has treated me very well over the years, and I have nothing to complain. I've been very happy.
And you've been at Dunbar the whole time?
Yeah.
So
I always used to say that I'm not going to be one of these teachers that's going to be a lifer, but here I am 21 years later, still there. But it's because I really do and truly like what I do, So.
do you plan to, I guess, retire in the next?
Well, teachers right now, the way they've changed the law the last few years, I think it was up until this year, you could retire at 27 years. So you don't draw full retirement, but that'll put me at 51. In about 6.5 years, I'll be 51 and have my 27 years of experience in it, and I could retire. So I'm on track to be there right now. I'm pretty financially sound. My wife and I are very good with money. We always have been.
You have to be with 4 kids.
I have 4 kids, and we're going to put them all through college, and our goal is to get them through debt-free.
Okay.
So we started saving when they were, little. We put money in a 529 account, which is a educational account. And, it's not a lot of money, but it's going to help,
Right.
So we've used the power of time, and I've always been good with finance. I always said that if I had to teach something else, it would be probably, I would have been a business teacher,
Okay.
because I love
but a lot
investing and things like that.
A lot of what you're teaching, especially if these kids go right out into the job market with photo and video skill sets, you got to have a basic understanding of finance. So I'm sure you have to teach some of that stuff to kids, especially any kids that are interested in doing something with it right out of high school.
I mean, I don't touch on finance a lot, but we do talk about it from time to time as it applies to what we're doing. We talk numbers and how it would make sense, like when you're starting out with equipment with photography. For instance, I'll tell them, if you want to be a sports photographer, I've been told by sports photographers that you really need to start out with about 30 grand worth of equipment to be able, and it's all wrapped up in the lenses. So we've looked at examples, I show them, I was like, how many of you have ever been to a sporting event and just look it down on the sidelines, look at those telephoto lenses. I mean, they're sitting on monopods, and I was like, the monopods aren't even so much for, the stop actions or whatever. I was like, it's more for the weight of the lens.
Yeah, the lens,
and the fluidity of needing
some of those
to be
lenses
able to move
are
around.
$20,000, $30,000, $40,000 for a single lens.
Right. And that's what I tell them, and they're like, what? That's why you start out, not with your own equipment, but start out as, go through the normal process. It's like, you're not going to get out of college making $75,000. That's unrealistic. So realistic is maybe you start with an internship, and or even if you don't go to college, you start in an internship and you work. I mean, that work-based experience is just as, in my opinion, because I'm a vocational teacher, is just as valuable as that degree is.
Yeah. Well, I would say in my own personal experience, 'cause I don't have a college degree, that if you really are serious about doing photo and video and working in today's market, YouTube, practice, find someone to work with. I've got a 21-year-old I'm working with right now, and we've been working together for about 2 or 3 months. And this guy if I've got something going on and he's not at his Amazon job, he goes everywhere with me. I took him up to Indiana with me. I took him down to Nashville with me. And I don't really pay him. So I'll usually pay expenses. So if we're staying overnight, I pay for the hotel room. I'll usually cover food. If we go out and have a couple drinks, I'll usually pay for the alcohol. So it won't cost him anything, but he literally just comes and works. And I've just seen such a jump in his ability. He's getting to a point where as I need to pay him for jobs, I'll be able to trust. But it's more than just the skill set, knowing how to work a camera, but it's how he interacts with my clients too.
Yeah.
because I can't send him out to a job and he could kill the job, do a great job, but then the client's like, man, he was just so disrespectful or inappropriate, or just the soft skills, right, that are extremely important, which is the biggest thing that I've been trying to hammer in him. Not that he doesn't have them, it's just like the way that I like them to be used on a job. And so a lot of it's just him being around me and being able to see how I interact with people, because we run into problems all the time. We were down in Nashville last weekend, and the company that we went down to do some shooting for was not ready for us. They were having furniture moved in and built, and they were having a holiday party. And so like I'm working, and like I walk into this and I literally have to, all right, I got to take over because they are not prepared, and I've got to create this video for this marketing company. And so I have to walk in and ask the right questions, but I also have to, I could tell that the lady that our point of contact was stressed out because she's got a million things going on. Like, I totally understand why she's stressed out. You know, it's not like just one of those crazy clients that are just stressed to be stressed. She literally has a bunch on her plate trying to take care of this holiday party, and then this furniture being moved in, and then we're doing a shoot in the middle of their office. And so,
not a good time.
Yeah,
right?
It was right. So I had to be very empathetic and sympathetic with her. And show her that I cared, but also be like, all right, I could tell she needs me to just tell her what to do here, right? So I walk in the office and I just start explaining what I'm going to do as I'm walking around their office and figuring out how I'm going to shoot this video. Where a lot of times I walk in, a client knows what they want, they tell me what they want, and we just knock it out. Where this is where like I just walked in blindly, but him seeing how I interacted and watching me interact, like even after it, he's like, wow, man. That was like really impressive how you just like walked in that place and just took over, because they had no idea what was going on. I'm like,
I think people really appreciate that, you know. I mean, you just took one thing off their plate, and I know when that happens as a teacher, you know, if I got 100 billion things going on at the same time too, it's just you asked earlier, you know, how do you deal with situations that like just, you know, one step at a time, you know. I mean, I look at the big picture, but I don't in the immediate, you know. I just want, if I have a list. I'm a list person. If I need to get something done, I write it down, right? Because I tell my students, if I don't write it down, it ain't getting done. So I'm
the same way.
I either do it right then and there on the spot, or I will go ahead and write it down, and that way I won't forget, because otherwise I will forget to do it. So yeah, just one step at a time, and that way I don't stress about stuff, because I'm pretty laid back and I don't worry about things. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't, and it's not the end of the world, you know.
Exactly. So but again, that's so to me, being good at your job, like the technical aspect with a camera is important, but almost not nearly as important as being able to communicate,
right?
And know when the right time to talk about things are with clients. We had another client when we went up to Indiana. The deal that I have with the marketing company is if it's outside of what they're hiring me to shoot, I'm allowed to pick that person up as a client, which I think is really awesome, because most companies will not allow you to do that. It's usually kind of like a non-compete thing. They're like, if they want extra work, they can go through us and we'll give you whatever your cut is. And so this client was talking about something as we were shooting stuff for the marketing company, and I'm like, well, I can like do this separate video for you, yada yada yada. And so we ended up staying like 3 extra hours later, but we got a whole nother job. Like then we did it that night. So like I actually paid him money for that, because I was like, well, I'm getting paid on this, so y'all actually pay you to do this. But just by dropping in a couple questions as I was working with him turned into an extra $1,000 that I made that night.
Nice.
And he paid me that. He paid the invoice the next day, and I had actually just delivered the video to him today. So
cool. Yeah, you were mentioning earlier about, you know, soft skills, and I know we've talked about this just before, and it's
a lot.
And yeah, it is something that, you know, I don't see too much of what other teachers do, but I know, you know, we all say the same thing, that soft skills are something that I think that our current generation is lacking more of, or maybe just it's not, I don't know, it's just different.
I also don't know if it's as needed. Like people my age and up, your age, we respect someone that walks up and shakes our hand, that communicates, makes eye contact.
But that's not this generation, David. I don't think, it's just different. And I think you and I looking in from the outside, you know, looking through that glass, it's kind of like, what is wrong with you people? Why don't you shake my hand or speak up, or, you know, and I think the technology that they have access to, it's just
they're not as comfortable around people.
Yeah. And, you know, and it could be COVID fallout too. I'm not going to blame that, but it certainly didn't help.
Right. Being locked in the house with the family and
yeah.
yeah.
that definitely, I mean, I could see that in my own family. It affected one of my children a lot more dramatically than the others, and just, it's kind of sad, and I don't know, everybody's mental health went down the pits, I think,
Oh,
during
for sure.
that whole thing. And now we're dealing with the aftermath, and it's going to take years to dig out of it. And I've always said that, it's not something that's going to go away overnight, but I just think, the technology that we have, the cell phones and the way video games are interactive, but you don't have to actually go over to the person's house to play the video game. I can just get online and play it.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
still playing with somebody, just not in the same room. So it's just different, so, but these soft skills, I tell them, if you go, out to a job interview, I don't care who it is. I mean, or where you go or what job it is, they will tell you the first thing they're looking for is those soft skills. Can you communicate? Can you, speak loudly? Can you do a good presentation? Are you going to show up to work on time? Are you punctual? Are you honest? These are all things that,
Even how you dress for an interview.
Exactly.
Because the people that are interviewing you that are going to make those decisions, they're my age.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit younger or your age, right? Someone in their 40s, 50s.
Right.
So like they still are going to appreciate those soft skills.
Yeah. And, and to be honest, I don't know that, if that's going to change with this generation or things are going to get better or worse. It's hard to say. I can't predict the future, but these are things that, we're social beings.
Right.
We're meant to be together, and
It's the world that I like to live in.
that's because that's the way I think we were designed. And without that interaction, social interaction with each other, I don't know. Life seems to be harder, for people like that.
Well, even when I did the career day with you guys and set up the booth, I don't know how many kids walked in and was like, "Hey," and literally, I'm like, "Excuse me, what?" Like I literally have to be like, "Can you speak up?"
Yeah.
Like you don't need to whisper to me. But they were just nervous to just talk to me,
Right. Yeah.
which just
Again,
blew my mind.
It's a skill that I try to instill in my own students. I'm like, look, guys, I talk about these skills, and we do presentations all the time. And I was like, and I go through, what's a good presentation, what's not, and I model that for them. I'll stand up, for instance, they'll do they all call it Google Slides now. Nobody uses PowerPoint in high school. But whatever. They all know what PowerPoint is, and they still call it's interesting because, again, that's Microsoft versus Google thing. They'll still call it.
Kind of like everybody calls a Kleenex,
And
even
a
though
Band-Aid,
Kleenex.
a Band-Aid.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Right. So, but anyway, they'll put together a slideshow presentation and put all their information together, but I'll tell them, look, don't put 1,000 words on one page. Nobody wants to be read to. I can read your presentation. Put it in bullets. Keep it simple. I'm a big fan of the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid, right?
I haven't heard that in a while.
I live and breathe that. So I like simplicity. Just tell me to the point, and let's go on. Leave out the fluff. I don't need the fluff. But anyway, so I'll model what a good presentation should be. So just on the fly, and again, this is I think a soft skill. I had somebody pull up a random presentation, and that they had just did it, and they did all the classic, read the slides. They had 100 words on one slide. And so I was like, I haven't put together this presentation. I haven't even seen it, until now. So I pulled it up. I pulled up one slide, and I was like, would you guys like me to model what a good presentation should look like? And they're all like, of course, right? So I did, and they're all like, you did a really good job of that. And I was like, this is what I've been trying to tell you. Isn't that much more interesting than said other person who just did it? And no offense to them, but these are the skills that I'm trying to teach you, right?
Well, conveying confidence is huge.
Absolutely.
And a lot of these kids...
you hit the nail on the head, David. I think that's the big part of it. You just got to build that confidence up. My wife has always said, because she's an introvert, but if you met her, you wouldn't think so. But she's like, I'm a good faker. I can fake it.
Well, but
I was like, but
we are attracted to confidence.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many of your students over the years have gone on to really try to do something within the photo video world.
Several of them. I mean, obviously, majority of them don't. But and again, I don't keep up with.
But when you have 200 kids, at least a couple of them have to walk away.
Absolutely, yeah. And I've got several. I had one that worked for Tops and Lex for a long time.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. I had another one. Tanner went on to work for. It's one of these big companies. I did some work for, like Google or something. I don't remember, but I've lost track with some of them. But But yeah, a lot of my students have gone on to do careers in this field,
and they'll probably find out real quickly. You've like, especially in this industry, communications. Unless you're going to sit and be an editor all the time, which I get, you could probably be an editor and do everything over email, just like getting your instruction, maybe a phone call here and there. But like when you're going face to face, like, I mean, I do probably 1 to 2 sales pitches every week where I'm talking to a company. If it's a past client or current or a client that I currently have or one I'm trying to get, if it's on the phone or face to face, which I prefer to be, everyone knows I'm a face to face guy. Yeah. But when you're pitching an idea, you've got a client that wants to hire you, like, Champs here in town.
Yeah.
I actually just talked to the owner of Champs last Monday, and we're going to be shooting a commercial for them. We're going to spend a month storyboarding it and then shoot it sometime in January. But again, it was
that confidence that got you the job.
I sold them a camera. I had this extra camera I sold him a camera, and I bumped into him at a coffee shop, and I was like, man, there's a lot of stuff that we could do for you. And he's like, you know what? I want to hear about that. And so he gave me his number, and then I set up a meeting. Like, I had to have the confidence to get on the phone, call him, say, hey, can I set up a meeting? Set up a meeting, showed up to the meeting. We talked for like 2 hours. And the good thing is, though, he holds these events throughout the year, and they don't really have a budget for the one coming up, but where they want to do some podcasting and they want to do some professional video shoots, and they can add a budget to it if they know they need it. So not only is we're going to do this commercial, long as that goes well, he's probably going to use me multiple times a year, and he's going to become a yearly client where that's going to give me more money on my bottom line every year.
Yeah, and it's consistent income too.
Right, so I can count on, like, if he's doing the same event every year, unless I screw something up or he just for some reason doesn't have the money, like, my company's going to get that business every year, and that it's taken me forever to get to this point.
Yeah, but it takes time. It's like anything. If you want to do it, you got to do it well, and it takes time to build that. Like I said earlier, when I tell my students, when you get out of when you enter the workforce, whether you go to college, do military, do career tech school, or whatever it may be, or even, get your doctorate or whatever, you're not going to come out of school or out of high school and be making top dollar. That's not the way this works, And I think a lot of kids have that, they have that kind of.
Well, there are a few careers out there. If you go into coding, doctors.
There might be a few, but
stock market of some sort. But we're talking like 1% of the kids are going to be able to walk out and make 80 to 100 something a year.
Yeah, that's just not realistic in most cases.
But let's be honest. Like, if you're making 35 to 40 coming out of high school, or within the first couple years out of high school,
that's respectable.
Yeah,
that's respectable.
And it's hard. I mean, that's not a lot of money to live on.
But it's respectable. And guess what? I've been there, done that. So I can tell them, from my own experience. I graduated college with a bachelor's degree, making $8 an hour back in the late 90s, right? In the early 2000s. It was hard, And granted, I was married and we had 2 incomes, but even 2 of us making $8 an hour, we still had to, live on a very tight budget. I drove lemon cars for a while, until
you do what it takes to make it.
Yeah, you do. And now we're doing just fine. So, people that say you can't make it on a teacher's budget, I dare you to I dare that challenge.
Do you feel kids get discouraged more now? Because, like, I feel like even us coming out of high school, it was hard, but we just buckled down and, like, did what we needed. And granted, I went into the military, so at least I had, like, a steady income coming right out of high school.
Yeah, and you have that military kind of experience that, hey, you know what, I'm going to make something of myself, and I'm not going to give myself excuses, and I come from.
Do you feel like kids do now? Like, do you feel like they get discouraged and they try to live off mom and dad more, or they like, this is so hard, like working 8 hours a day,
I think there's some of that mentality, but again, I just look at my own kids, and I've had so many people just tell me, my son's working 2 jobs right now. He works at Chick-fil-A and at Panera. And he loves making money. I'm not gonna lie. He's trying to save up for college, and he's always coming to us and like, oh, well, if I do this and this, I can save this much money, and I can live in this dorm, or I can do this food plan. So he's got it all worked out.
But a lot of that has to do with the parenting.
It has to do with the parenting,
like the way that a kid is raised.
Yep.
And so maybe it just goes back to the parents over and over again.
And there are, the teacher, if there is a kid who truly wants to live like and better their life, for lack of better words or whatever, make something of themselves, they connect with a teacher. And I have seen countless times too where I've connected with a student and they had crap lives, just rough houses, and they lived in the worst part of town or whatever. And, both parents weren't in the picture, broken families, whatever. And I've seen them come out of that situation because they wanted to. My own wife was in that situation when she was young, and she was like, I don't want to live like this. It's a decision that you have to make and say, you know what? I want better for myself. Right. I want to be out of this situation. So
a great teacher can do that.
And a great teacher can do that.
I had, so I was dyslexic and ADHD. I still am, probably. I don't think that's something you lose.
I don't think so either, because I probably have a touch of that too. I'm not going to lie.
So I had an aide in high school that helped. Everything for me is on the learning side of things has always been difficult, even though I feel like I've done pretty good for myself. But I had this one teacher, and we used to make a joke. It's a little bit heavier set, and we said pound for pound, so he was the best teacher around. But there were so many times I struggled in high school, and she came to my aid, and that was kind of her job, right? She was like an aide that I had to connect with. But she always, she would talk to the teachers, because sometimes I think teachers found it difficult trying to teach me, and I have found it difficult trying to learn. Yeah. And she knew how to communicate between the two of us, build a bridge, and then get the teacher to do a better job of teaching in a way that I could learn. Because it wasn't like I wasn't trying to learn. Sometimes the way they were trying to teach was not conducive to the way that I needed to. Anyways, but it was extremely, I think, if it hadn't been for her coming out of high school, I barely was passed. I mean, I'm pretty sure I was failing some classes, but I had signed up for the military, and I think she went to two of my teachers and said, "Just pass him, literally, just pass him.
He just needs that edge,
and he's going to be fine. I know he's struggling in school, and he probably shouldn't be passed, but because there's two classes, I'm pretty sure that if I didn't pass it, when I got my diploma, I couldn't join the military.
And then it's a snowball effect, right?
But that was probably one of the best things that anybody could have ever done for me. Because I got my diploma, influence. I went into the military, and the military gave me the other tools that I was missing, I feel like. And it's really helped in my life.
Yeah.
And my parents.
Yeah.
My parents are
they always say are your first line of education,
And they were great in that aspect.
Yeah. Yeah. And if your parents care, and it's kind of funny because we years ago we had, parent teacher conferences. We had to work at within the first 6 weeks of school. And it was always the parents who had students who were doing well in school. Those were always the ones who showed up. But the ones who didn't show up were the ones who needed to be there because their kids were the ones that weren't doing well. And so it was kind of it backfired because it's like the people who really need to be here aren't, and so how do you best drive? It's tough, because you're just dealing with so many kids. I've always said if you had smaller classes, which I know there's nothing we can do about that. It is what it is.
How big are your classes?
I have I have one small class, and it's just because it's a senior class. It's a capstone class. I've got 16 in it, but most of mine have between 30 and 35. That's normal.
You can't. How do you keep up with 35 kids?
It's
especially
hard.
if you had all 35 that were just ignoring you,
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. It's not easy, and then all the other things you have to micromanage.
Are they allowed to have their phones in class?
They are, but we have a very I like the simplicity of we have a red sign and a green sign. It's up on our board, but when we don't. If they're working on a project or something, I'll flip it to green and say it's okay to have your cell phone out if you want to listen to music or something like that. And I'm fine with that, right? But then I'll flip it to red if we're doing something if I'm giving a presentation or we're taking notes or we're learning a software, like Illustrator, Photoshop, whatever.
And are they pretty respectful for the most part?
For the most part, but we still have those that'll get them out every so often. We're allowed to write them up, but it's just,
what does that do though?
It does.
Other than cause.
It just, I don't know. It gets them out of class and they send them to this thing called reset or safe. And that's where they go and they're supposed to be able to make up homework and do things like that.
Do they take their phone away when they walk into that class?
Yes, they do. but they, I don't know that it does much for them, in my opinion. I don't really know. I would rather them be in class than be taken out, because so what I'll do is I'll just ask them politely, can you please put it away, And
usually they're pretty respectful.
In most cases, yes. But I find that, please and thank yous go a long way instead of just saying, hey, I need you to put that away.
Sometimes it takes giving someone respect to get respect.
Right, exactly. But, sometimes you do get frustrated too, because they'll have it out 3-4 times after saying that multiple times. And you're just like, okay, look, I've asked politely several times. So in that case, I could write them up, but it usually doesn't come to that. So they're usually pretty good about putting it away, but sometimes they'll find a way to try to sneak it in there again. It's always constant battle. Cell phones have always been
I got to text your boyfriend or girlfriend.
Right? Because that's
important. 5 classes down the way that they'll see at lunch in 20 minutes.
To each their own, I guess. But it's the cell phones are always, like I said, they're a tool, and
it's a tool that I abuse for sure.
Yeah, we all do.
It's like an extension. Yeah. I don't know how many times over the years, you drive away and you leave the phone at home and you don't have time to turn back and get it.
And you're like, oh my gosh, you feel naked without it.
You feel so weird. Right. You're constantly thinking about the phone.
But you're like, you know what? The first 20 years of my life, I lived without one of these. And so it's okay to unplug once in a while.
I think it was 2002 when I got my first one, so I would have been 16. So yeah, like...
That's about when I got my first phone.
And cell phones, let's be honest, cell phones haven't been able to do what they could do for, probably 2010, 2012, when the iPhones really started... I think
they became smartphones.
2008 or 2009's 2007? 2007 is when the first iPhone.
When the first iPhone came.
But
out,
they couldn't get on the internet and really they weren't a computer probably till 2010 or 2012, a full on computer. And so like my first cell phone, it was just texting. Texting and phone calls. That's literally what it was for.
My first cell phone was the iPhone 4S, so I held out for a long time.
Really?
Yeah, because I had a flip phone for the longest time, for like 10 years.
Oh, so your first smartphone was
my first smartphone was the iPhone 4S, yeah. But before that, I just had a flip phone, and those were great because they were small and, but you couldn't do anything with it. Just you could send a text on them, but it was like, you had to get to that C, you had to hit the 1 key 3 times.
Yes. I remember that. Yeah, of course. What amazed me though is kids in high school, like the Blackberries they had the Blackberry, and they could just those.
They flipped up, and you had the actual hard keys on them.
Yeah, but even the ones, but the kids, there were kids that they could write whole entire paragraphs doing 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2,
because
3.
That's what they practice. Practice makes perfect, right?
I remember kids in class would be sending text messages. They'd be paying attention to class, and
not even looking.
They'd have the phone. Yeah, maybe like
that's
a little.
That's kind of sad, but also kind of amazing at the same time.
That you're that good at writing.
Yeah, but it can put on a show to show that you're not. You're doing it, but not really.
Nowadays it's so much easier. Mm-hmm. I'm not gonna lie, I do voice to text so much.
Oh, I do too.
It's so much easy until you get I remember when I was dating a girl and I said something that had the word like in it and it came out as love. After
How'd that go for you?
2 dates, she's like.
A little early for this, right?
She's like, "Did you mean what you just said?" And I'm like,
"You looked at the text,
and
I'm like, oops.
no, not at all. Maybe one day, but not today."
Right.
She's like, "I figured, but I just want to make sure." So, but yeah. So 21 years in high school teaching, and maybe another 10 to go.
It could be 6.5. It could be 10.
Do you get more of a pension if you stick around for a little bit longer?
Yeah, and it's by year. So the pension, I'm still on the pension system. Oh, what I was going to say earlier, so I'm grandfathered into the pension system since I've been in it. But teachers that start now, they have to go till they're 57, regardless of their age. And they do I don't remember what their retirement system is, but it's not the pension anymore. So they are putting into, I guess, equivalent to the private sector's 450 or
401k.
401k, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Because I think maybe it's a 403b. I think that's what the educational version is. But yeah, they have to go till they're 57. So regardless of age, they got.
But you could teach until your 60s if you wanted.
Oh, right? I could teach until I was 101 if I could, and if I wanted to. But yeah, it's just a matter of preference there. But I max out on the pension at the age of 55 plus 27 years. So if I get my 27 years in before I'm 55, which I will at the age of 51, then I can still retire. I just won't draw a full pension. But each year I go closer to 55, I get
a larger,
large $200-$300 more per month for the rest of my life.
Right.
Yeah. Kind of. I think that's what the.
I mean, I feel like you're going to have to do something anyways. You're not going to quit
I don't know.
teaching
You
and
know,
then not and like.
I'm not going to say one way or another because it's still.
Do you guys want to travel?
Yeah, my wife and I, we love traveling. I've been to Australia, we've been to Europe, and took the kids to. I mean, that was before we had kids. We went to those places. But we have some friends that live in Australia, and oh my gosh, I didn't want to come back home. It was amazing. Really loved it there.
One of the countries I didn't get to go to when I was in the Navy.
It's pretty.
I've been everywhere. I've been all over Asia and the Middle East, but never got to go to Australia.
Yeah. So eventually we'll get there. But yeah, we want to travel a lot. And when our kids, my last kid, well, here's the thing. My last kid will be a senior or graduating a senior in high school, Kaylin. And she will be, I'll be 51. So I'll be eligible to retire at the same time she graduates high school.
Are they all going through Dunbar?
Yes. Right now, 2 of my kids are there, and I've got 2 in middle school.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I've got.
Have either one of your kids taken your class?
Yes, they both have. In fact, they're both in one of my classes this year.
Oh, really?
And it's really, a lot of people ask me, is it awkward to have your kid in there? And it's really not. You just kind of get used to it.
I think it depends on the kid.
It does, but
so if the kid's going to be respectful
they're fine. But I'll try to throw like a little sarcasm in there, but I don't overdo it because I don't want to embarrass them, or whatever. But yeah, my 2 older kids
hugs and kisses before and after class.
Right. Oh, it was funny. This yesterday, I think it was yesterday. No, the day before yesterday. We did these. They called them gobblegrams. So I gave. There are these little suckers with a note, and you could buy them for like a buck and send them to people. So I bought one for each of my kids and a few other teachers, and it just happened to be they brought Tristan, who's my oldest. He's a senior at Dunbar. They brought him in his gobblegram, and a couple of kids. It was I guess some sort of fundraiser for one of the clubs at Dunbar. They were doing it for, so I was like, I'll do my part. It's $1, right? So it's not. So I bought like 5 or 6 of them and sent them to a few people. But they brought his by in class on Monday on Monday, and they said, I got a gobblegram for Tristan, and so they started I said, he's up there, and I said, everybody, Tristan got a gobblegram, let's clap. And so the whole class started they stood up and gave him a standing ovation and started clapping. So just stuff like that. It probably embarrassed him, but
he'll live.
He'll live.
You need some embarrassment in life.
That's right. When's the last time everybody needs to be embarrassed once in a while. So I did my part as a father. Yeah, I thought it was kind of funny.
So one of the things that I do at Dunbar with you guys is sit on the board for the media advisory board. Mm-hmm. How long have you been running that? Or how long has that been implemented? Because I think it's really cool that you guys have outside advisors, professional outside advisors that help with your guys' curriculum year in and year out. Yeah,
so it is actually a federal law that we have that to get federal Perkins money. It's Perkins money, and that's another one of our. We have 3 pools of money. One comes from federal Perkins money, which is subdivided between all the CTE or the career and technical education programs.
Okay.
So we each get a little piece of that pie, which it's very. I use most of it to, fund my TSA, my technology club that I sponsor, and then we get school funds and then county funds. So, but anyway, I forget where I was going with this. What was your question again?
Just how long the board had been going on.
That's right, yeah. Sorry, I lost train of thought there.
Just got too excited. It's okay.
Right?
I'm taking pictures of you over here.
So the advisory board's been around for 5 or 6 years now. And it's just community members that make up and kind of advise us. And I use you guys to help me decide, should I be doing this in curriculum? Like, you're a big advocate for soft skills, and I know this. And I take your ideas and I use them in class all the time. And I'll get other people's one of my other people on the advisory boards from KET. And she invited us to come to KET to do a
field trip, right?
Field trip.
Yeah. Are you guys going to go through with that?
Yeah, I got it scheduled for January 20th.
Oh, heck yeah, that's awesome.
So we're going over there, and they're going to do a couple of workshops. Yeah, so I think they'll really enjoy that. But I'm taking 2 of my classes to that, so it's just stuff like that. That's how I'll have people come in and guest speak like you did in the past. We'll go on site to see their facilities and what they can provide for us.
So how much from the board has really influenced the way that you teach or change your curriculum? over the years?
I think most people are not going to like, I think everybody likes what I'm doing. They like the curriculum that I'm teaching and the style that I teach it in. So I don't know that it's necessarily affecting that so much, but it's just like, I think a big part of it is just more or less, you're influencing on, like the soft skills is a big one.
Right.
Trying to,
So when I come in and speak and we do career day.
And so you don't necessarily tell me how I should teach those soft skills, but you reverberate ideas to me, and then I just kind of, go with a plan that I
make
feel
small
like
changes and stuff
that works in ways that I know will teach that goal.
So do you have an outline that you have to stick to yearly, or a lot of what you teach is like on you to create that curriculum?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, the state does come up with a general list of standards. We're standards based, so they have a list of standards, and how we go about teaching those standards is really
because I feel like
so we do have some flexibility there.
Because of what you teach, there's got to be like math and history. I understand like there's specific standards. They got to teach this. They got to learn this. But with you, I can't imagine this like, well, they have to know how to work this camera this way.
And there is no specific way to teach it. But as long as I'm covering the standards, which we obviously do, I think there's some flexibility in how you go about doing that. And that's, I think, true in all of your electives, like you were saying. I'm not a core content teacher. I don't know how, I guess I've seen it through my own kids. Like, when my son's in pre-cal right now, I see the standards that he's doing because I look in Infinite Campus to see, what they're doing and the way that teacher goes about doing it is very much going to be their style. But as far as how they have to go about doing it, I'm not as familiar with that, But with us, we do have flexibility, which is nice, because you can put your own spin on it. And
I feel like you have to.
Yeah.
The market changes way too much.
Right.
I'd say that you probably have to make changes in your curriculum yearly.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so like if you didn't have that, unless you had some oversight that was very on top of what you were teaching, like, and telling you what to do, like, I don't see how you could do a good job if you didn't have kind of control over how you taught and what you taught. And
I think it gives you the more flexibility you can have, I think the more creative you can be with it, and I think students really enjoy that, so there's going to be projects that some kids are like, this is dumb, whatever, or they don't like it and you're not going to keep their attention, but there's others that are just, they're going to run with it and blow you out of the water. Like, wow, I didn't expect that kind of thing. So you're going to have, and that's the beauty of it is every kid learns differently. We have to kind of differentiate. And I allow for that differentiation by, bringing out their creative side, but also I call it the science and the art side. There's science in photography where we're learning the equipment, learning the ISO, the aperture shutters, whatever. And then there's the artsy side of it where, we're looking at lighting and composition.
I call it the technical and creative side.
Technical and creative. See, you sound more technical than even I do. But yeah, it's back and forth, and how we go about doing that, again, is just going to vary. And sometimes it's going to reach some kids and other times it's not. But then the next project, it might flip-flop, And so the goal is to reach everybody as often as you can and to allow that flexibility that I'm given to be able to teach it with my style is going to give the kids the opportunity to blossom, if they want to, and so they can take it to the level that they're able to go as creative as they want or, as basic as they want if they don't want to put the effort in.
So what's one of the times that students just blown you out of the water? Like when you're like, wow, I did not see that coming.
Some of them, like the most recent one was, we did the composition photo shoot recently, and some of I have them do six because I tell them there's hundreds of compositional techniques in photography. So we stick to the basics, rule of thirds, framing, lines, simplicity, and then I threw in a couple extras just kind of for fun, the panning shot and a zoom effect shot. So just some of the photos that they took are like, I'm like, wow, you guys, this is really impressive, So they went out and instead of just going out and sometimes they'll be like, all right, need a panning shot. So they'll take one photo and then they're done. And then, like you guys can't do that. You got to go out and, if you put a camera in my hand and just say go, I could stay out there all day long because I just become it like is a piece and a part of me. And you put a camera in my hand, and man, I can stay out all day long. And the only thing that's tugging me back is my family. The kids are like, I'm ready to go. Let's go. Like, well,
sometimes you got to sit there for 2 hours to get the shot that you're looking for.
Exactly. And I tell them, I was like, we pull up some shots from like National Geographic, or I was like, how long do you think this photographer took to get this? You think they got it on the first shot?
Yeah.
No, they were there probably for weeks.
I sat in a chair for 3 hours to get that shot. So the sun was
exact. Got in the spot and then you needed it, right? And so I can tell the kids that actually spent some time on that project because they just were into it and just wanted to do it and blew the photos away, and so got some amazing shots. And others that just did it to get it done and didn't spend much time on it, So it's those photo shoots when I see their photos and just amazed at some of the quality is really impressive. So.
Yeah, I mean, the cameras you guys use are more than adequate if someone understands light and composition well enough.
Right, yeah.
Like, you can get a professional shot.
Yeah, and I tell them, we do a unit in lighting, a unit in composition, but I was like, really and truly, these things are every unit we do, regardless of what it is, it's going to have a little bit of that in everything. It's really kind of the foundation of all, photography is your composition and lighting. It's everything, every situation you're in. I tell them by the end of the year, you guys should come out of my class, not as amateurs anymore. I was like, there's 4 controls on the camera that are inside a little box on the dial, right? All the ones on the outside of those rings, I say, those are for amateurs. That's what amateurs use. Professionals, they use these 4, and that's your program mode, aperture priority, shutter priority, and manual.
Yeah.
So
I'm about manual.
I tell them, we start out with manual at the beginning of the year, and it's not until the end of the year that I show them the other 3, or sometime in the spring.
Right.
They're always like, well, why didn't you just show us those first? I was like, because
kind of a cheat code a little bit.
It's cheating a little bit. So if you know manual, you can
the
do
other
any
ones
situation. Right.
So, well, Ben, I appreciate you coming on and talking to us today. This has been a lot of fun learning about high school all over again. Horrible flashbacks. No.
It's not so bad, David. They tell me all the time, hey, you've been in high school for 21 years. I was like, yeah, they can't seem to graduate me.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm just dumb or what. just trying to be funny.
Oh, man.
I enjoy what I do.
Well, we appreciate you coming on. And guys, thanks for stopping in to the Disponett experience. We'll catch you next time.